Okay, so welcome. So in this video, I'm going to derive the quadratic formula that is used in finding the roots or zeros of a quadratic equation. So the quadratic formula will find all kinds of solutions for the zeros of a quadratic solution. So there won't always be whole numbers, which is what you get when you factor. So if something's not factorable, then you would want to use the quadratic formula because there still may be solutions, they're just not integer solutions or whole number solutions, okay? And so solutions may also not be real solutions, okay? So here's how you derive the quadratic formula. So again, we're going to start with a general quadratic equation, right? So we're going to start with ax squared plus bx plus c is equal to 0. And now what we're going to do is we're going to solve this by completing the square with this general equation. So the first thing I need to do is I need to divide out the a, so because I can't do completing the square unless I have a 1 here. So if I divide everything by a, then I get x squared plus b over a x plus c over a equals to 0. Okay, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to complete the square with this part. So I'm going to write this as x squared plus b over a x plus c over a equals 0. Now, what do I have to add here in order to get it to be a perfect square? Well, I have to divide this by 2, or in other words, multiply by a half, and then square it. So if I multiply this by a half and square it, what do I get? Well, let's do it over here. So I get BA times 1/2 equals B over 2A. And then I'm going to square it, which means I get B squared over 4A squared. Okay? So now I have to add, since I have to add b squared over 4a squared in order to get the perfect square, I also have to subtract it on the same side, because the net effect has to be 0. So if I add an amount, I have to then subtract the amount at the same time. So I'm going to subtract b squared over 4a squared equals 0. So now I can go ahead and erase this, my scratch work over here. Okay, now this is a perfect square, so now I can write this as x plus what? Well, it's going to be this divided by 2, or in other words, multiplied by a half. So this will be b over 2a quantity squared. And then I have this piece over here, which is going to be plus c over a minus b squared over 4a squared equals 0. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to move everything to the one side, right? Because now I'm going to solve for x. That's the whole purpose of this. So now I'm going to move this over. So I'm going to get x plus b over 2a quantity squared equals, now this is going to be b squared over 4a squared minus c over a. Okay, now I want to get a common denominator here. Okay, so let's get a common denominator. And let's write this as, well, I've got a 4 here. I'm missing a 4 and an a over here. So I'm going to multiply the top and the bottom by 4a. So that'll give me b squared over 4a squared minus 4ac over 4a squared. Okay, see where I'm going? Some of you might see where I'm going with this. So now, let's come back up here. So now, what do I got? I've got x plus b over 2a squared equals, now I'm going to combine these like terms. I'm going to combine those. So I'm going to get b squared minus 4ac over 4a squared. Okay? And so now I'm going to take the square root of both sides. And so if I take the square root of both sides, I get x plus b over 2a equals plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 4a squared. Now, I'm going to split this up into two radicals because this is the perfect square on the bottom. So this will be square root of plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac. And the bottom, well, this is going to be the square root of 4a squared. Okay? And so this becomes plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. And so now I get x plus b over 2a is equal to plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac under the radical divided by 2a. Now I'm going to subtract b over 2a from both sides, and I get x equals negative b over 2a plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. And now I just combine it into one fraction, and I get the quadratic formula, which is negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac, all divided by 2a. And this is what we call the quadratic formula. And that's what we're going to be using in the next examples and so on. Okay, take care.